Thank you. Let's start with this ambitious title of how do you invent, how do you innovate? And I'm going to share with you a model, a template I have used called Idea Hexagon, and have run workshops in many cities worldwide, and of course practiced it myself at MIT. So my work is about imaging, and the fact that there are more than 3 billion cameras out there in the world in people's pocket is changing the way we think about imagery. So the kind of problems we're looking at in my group are how can we create very low-cost solutions that are add-ons to mobile phones so you can do eye tests? Or how can you create cameras that run not 1 million or 1 billion, but 1 trillion frames per second, fast enough to see light in slow motion? And with that, create cameras that can see around corners, beyond line of sight, and new types of displays that you can see in 3D without glasses. Now, as entrepreneurs, we are always trying to invent and innovate and try to make an impact, but often the process can get very confusing, especially for my students who I'm bombarding with all kinds of crazy things I hear from all over the world. And to declutter that, I think the easiest way to move forward is to say, if I hear a great idea X, what is next? And for that, what I've used is this mental framework called Idea Hexagon, and everything I'm going to tell you is just pure common sense, but it's great to have a framework. All right, should we get started? So if I told you a great idea called you can share photos online, what would be your next idea? Share videos online. And Flickr was sold for a few tens of million to Yahoo, and YouTube was sold for $1.6 billion. And in a way, all they did is they went 1 dimension higher. Instead of 2D images, they went to 2D plus time, which is video. And we can apply this idea of generalizing to the next dimension in so many ways. If I told you an idea, airbags for cars save lives, what would be your next idea? Think micro, think macro. Airbags for bicycles, airbags for aircrafts, and so on. So you get the idea. The next strategy is to simply do a fusion. If you hear a great idea X, here at NPC, marry that with something else the idea Y. Hammer, don't just hit the nail that you're given, but find all the other nails that also you can hit. And this is a good time to tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in a very modest family in a city called Nashik, which is very close to Bombay. Never went to a restaurant, never went to see a movie. But when I was 10 years old, my father gave me an old black and white camera and gave me 1 roll of film. And back in the days, developing a film was very, very expensive. So most of the times, I would just kind of compose the shot and not actually release the trigger. So you know how long it took me to finish a roll of 24? It took me a whole year to finish that roll. So I think from that, I have come a very long way. And now we're building cameras that can take pictures at 1 trillion frames per second. So we call this femtophotography, fast enough to see light in slow motion. And so here's a movie, let's see if it plays, where we are sending a pulse of light into this Coke bottle, and we can see light in slow motion. It propagates through the bottle. A lot of the light goes and hits the cap of the Coke bottle, and then the photons scattered in all different directions. Some of the photons get trapped near the top in an air bubble, and they're bouncing around. Meanwhile, on the table, the light is propagating as if you threw a stone in a pond of water. And after several picoseconds, you see at the back of the bottle the light focusing back. Right? And to see this movie, we have to slow down the slow motion by a factor of 10 billion. Right? So this is kind of exciting. We can do all kinds. This is an amazing hammer I found. I can create these ultimate high-speed cameras. So we can create this cool photography where we can see the earlier light and the later light. But with the same hammer, we can start creating new superpowers. Some superheroes can fly, other superheroes can lift 100 tons of weight. What about a superhero who can see around corners, beyond line of sight? And the idea is actually straightforward. To see beyond corners, you shine light on the door, part of the light goes into the room, some fraction of the light comes back to the door, and even tinier fraction back to the camera, and by analyzing this multiple bounces of light, you can start figuring out what's going on. And this is not just science fiction. Using our Femtophotography, ultra-fast imaging, we have built this setup in the lab and have shown many demonstrations. Of course, we love the money that comes from the military who wants to see around corners. But a lot of the research is about building new types of endoscopes, creating cars that can avoid collision of what's around the bend, looking for survivors in hazardous conditions by shining light through visible surfaces, and create types of new medical imaging devices that can see deep inside our body. So strategy number 3 was, given a hammer, all the nails. So here's the question. If there's a great idea called an app store that continues to improve the quality of a device well after you have bought it, why don't we have an app store, an open platform for every electronic device that's out there? Your car, your fridge, your microwave, and so on. And that's the strategy behind the next company we have spun out from my lab, which is creating an app store for cameras by creating, instead of a phone that goes to a smartphone, we have a camera that goes to a smart camera, and we're creating a new type of an app store. And that's LensBricks, and my co-founder Raji is here, and I believe at 2:45 we're talking a little bit more about new types of devices that could have app stores. And this kind of solutions can provide peace of mind at home, give you deep insights on how the customers are behaving in the real world, think about safety and monitoring, completely get rid of all the cables that you have on a patient, and simply use a smart camera and an app to figure out heart rate, variability, weight, all from a single viewpoint of a camera that preserves privacy. And of course, improve efficiency in businesses. And this idea hexagon is not just for technology. I know we are all tech-centric entrepreneurs, but it can be used for everything else in life. How do you organize your dinner party, or how do you decide where to take vacation for? You can take what you did last year or for your last dinner party and apply this idea hexagon to see what you want to do next. All right, let's keep moving. The fourth strategy is take the idea you just heard and apply an adjective. And you should always have a bag of adjectives with you. Okay? The most common ones are, let's make it faster or better or cheaper. But what are some other ones you're hearing out there? Make it distributed, make it impulsive, make it lighter, disruptive, disappear, that's a good one. And a lot of new ones as well. Wikipedia is encyclopedia democratized, Pandora is radio personalized, and so on. So always carry this bag of words with you and just attach them to every idea you hear. The next one, and as founders and entrepreneurs, this comes to us naturally, is be a rebel and do exactly opposite of what everybody else is doing. So Fosbury in the 1960s realized that in a high jump, the American colleges were replacing the sandpit with a foam rubber. Now, in a sandpit, you must land on your arms and feet so that you don't injure your back. But once they replaced that with a foam rubber, you could land on your back. And he came up with this really bizarre method of running up to the high jump bar and then twisting his body and landing on his back. Kind of strange. Long story short, he went on to win the gold medal in Olympics, and now everybody uses the Fosbury flop. Now, in the whole ecosystem of an athlete, the diet, the training, the peer group, how you run up to it, one tiny thing had changed. Instead of a sandpit, it was the foam rubber. And that completely transformed how the world of high jumping went ahead. So all of us need to keep track of that Fosbury moment. You read in a magazine, you meet somebody, you hear this flicker of ideas somewhere, and that could be completely transforming the world as we go ahead. And for me, the Fosbury moment was an announcement of the Retina display a few years ago. You know, a pixel that's so small, down to about 20 micrometers, half the width of a human hair, unimaginable. What can you do with this display? Of course, you can enjoy your movies and cricket in high def on your phones, but you can do something else. And what probably they didn't realize is that we can use the Retina display for actually looking at the eyes. So let's think about how we do eye tests now, right? We have the slit lamps to look for your cataract. Device hasn't changed in a long time. To look at the back of your eye, to look at the Retina. This is a $250,000 device. But what I love about this picture is the user interface for the nurse. You know, my head is her mouse. You know, she tries to position my head, see if you get a picture, and you know what she does if she doesn't get a good picture the first time? She shoves it even harder. I love the user interface here. And to get prescription for eyeglasses lost in a phoropter. So, you know, this is humorous, but there are 300 million people in India who never go see an eye doctor and are walking around with blurry vision. So my lab came up with a new solution called iNetra, which is a device to get prescription for your eyeglasses on a mobile phone. You snap it on, look through it, click on a few buttons, and gives you data for prescription for your eyeglasses. And you can also scan for your cataract. And it completely eliminates solutions that involve these lasers and high-end products. It's completely portable and uses this principle called shock-Hartman wavefront sensor. And the X bar here, the inversion for me was that instead of shining light into the eye, why don't we just ask the patient to look into a display? Change the direction of light. That's the inversion. And by solving this very complicated mathematical problem on a cell phone display with some combination of optics, we can start looking at the world in very unique ways. And it's not just about blurry vision. Children won't get to school and they will remain uneducated. So with the thermometer for our eye, we can also help grown-ups who might grow up and may not be able to perform their job because of the blurry vision. And so it's a huge socioeconomic problem when you think about vision. And sometimes you just want to watch Ronaldinho kick that soccer goal in high def. Whatever the reason, I think vision is very, very important. And so we have addressed this problem in our lab, and we have spun out a venture called iNetra, and the device looks something like this. It's a snap-on phone that goes into a binocular, which we can produce for almost no cost. Standard smartphone, you snap through it, click through it, say OK, and you have your prescription ready. So during the breaks, we'll do some tests with this. Okay, so final strategy, given a nail, find all the hammers. So the nail for me was, wow, millions of people worldwide are not getting eye tests. And so we came up with all kinds of crazy solutions, all kinds of hammers to hit this nail. Literally 20, 30 ideas that were spinning in my head and my teammates. And we realized if we try to do it the traditional way, like spin out one company at a time, it'll take us 20 years to do that. And we simply don't have time to reach millions and millions who need these solutions. So we said, let's do it in a different way. So this is a picture of one of my labs. Every student in my group has a 3D printer on their desk. Everybody has a high-end machine. These guys are really having fun, okay? And they enjoy doing it. But what they enjoy even more is having an impact on impact in using technology. So what we have done is effectively created an MIT experience, and we have come to India and tried to see how we can take these 20, 30 amazing ideas and co-develop them with innovators here and see how we can spin out 20 startups one at a time in parallel with our collaborators. So we call this program RedX, Rethinking Engineering, Design, and Execution. And we have this program where we send out a call every year around this time, and we get thousands of applications, and we select about 100 innovators to come and work with us. This is a picture from Hyderabad, working with LV Prasad Eye Institute, because they are really experts in the eye. And we bring in a lot of experts, about 20 experts from MIT, with local innovators, and they go on and create solutions. And this has been doing really well. Amazing support. We just opened a new innovation center at LV Prasad with about several crores of funding. And all of you are welcome to participate in this new way of innovating. But it gets better, because once you find a nail, which is how do you convert ideas into entrepreneurship through the local innovators, we can do more. Kumbh Mela happens once every 12 years. The next one is taking place in Nashik in August of 2015, about a year from now. And 30 million people show up for a month in a city of just 2 million. One of my colleagues was asking me, how do you deal with 30 million people? And I said, we don't. And this is a huge problem, because the way we have dealt with issues like this, in a country, by the way, I'm from Nashik, is we let the government solve it. Build new bridges, build new roads, bring a lot of paramedicals, bring a lot of police. But I think as entrepreneurs, in this decade, we can do in a very unique way. It's a fascinating place, going to Kumbh Mela, although most of us shy away from it. It's a huge opportunity, not just for the local communities, but also entrepreneurs, to use that as a platform. Just imagine 30 million people. You can test out all kinds of ideas. So we're starting a new initiative around Kumbh Mela and thinking about how we can innovate around that, and using the same nail and finding new hammers to solve that. So again, we have 20 or 30 MIT and Harvard innovators. A lot of brainstorming went on at MIT. We call it Kumbh at MIT. But this is not a hackathon. It's not a competition. It's a build-a-thon, and it's a continuous process. And every 3 months, we spend time in Nashik. And I personally go, and we are doing a lot of hand-holding, a lot of coaching, a lot of problem identification, and moving forward together on that. How do we use the cell phone? I mean, if you think about crowd control, the way was to use just clickers, a piece of paper. But using data from cell phone towers, we can actually map the crowds in real time, even if only about 5% of people are carrying their feature phone. Or we're creating new solutions for transportation, which is inspired by things like Uber and Ola cabs, but can work in a cashless manner. We're creating other cashless methods for transactions near the ghats, where nobody wants to carry even their mobile phone, the last mile of cashless delivery. And we're creating new ways for creating bike sharing that don't require a use of a credit card. So it's very exciting. I encourage all of you to participate. It's a deep cultural experience, and we have had a tremendous, tremendous response. The mayor, the city commissioner, the head of BSNL, the head of railways, the head of taxis, they're all coming to us, and they think now we, the Kumbhathon Foundation, is running the Kumbh Mela, because we are such a neutral entity, and we're connecting all of them to see how the problems can be solved. It's a very exciting time. So I encourage you to apply to the Immersion program. The event itself, the camp itself takes place last week of January 24 to 31st. And don't worry, we are not Stanford. There is no charge for this program. So I'm a professor, so I must give you homework. Now that you have heard a mental framework of how to come up with new ideas, here's the homework for you. You heard an idea hexagon. What's next? Thank you.
This is pretty exciting. You got to come visit Burning Man. I'm from California, right?
But not from Stanford.
60,000, I know. Kumbhathon is a little bit bigger than that. So Apple has been top of mind, so I have to ask you, Apple Pay? Anything going on with Apple Pay?
Oh, that's right. So since I spent so much time at eBay and Walmart and Apple, actually I have. No comments there.
Damn. Ravi, we got to get someone from Apple up here soon, you know? So I'm sure there are a ton of questions for Ramesh. I'll hold back on mine. Quick, who wants the first one? Nobody? Nobody wants to go to Kumbh? Oh, there. Go ahead, get the mic there.
Hi, Ramesh. Very interesting talk. I have two questions for you. One is, let's say I have an idea and I see someone has already done it. How far do you think is catchable? 6 months, 1 year, 2 years? That's one. And the second one is more of a philosophical question. Can anyone be a Edison or a Da Vinci in today's world as an inventor?
Sure. The first question was, what about competition? I have a whole another talk. Remember, I'm a professor. I like to give talks on something called Strive for 5, and it's online. You can take a look. On Strive for 5 talks about, how do you decide whether an idea is worth pursuing? And given that I'm a professor and have many startups of my own, and also teach venture classes where we spin out 3 or 4 companies every semester, this is the advice I have to give to new entrepreneurs all the time. And one of the bullets in that is how do you make sure you're ahead of the curve? And when you think you're behind the curve, how you can still figure out what's your unfair advantage. The second question was, how do you become an Edison? I'm not an Edison. But the one thing I can tell you is that you don't need to have a degree, or definitely not a PhD, or you don't have to call yourself a scientist to invent and innovate and solve problems. And we see the examples of that everywhere, so I'm not saying anything new here. But I think what distinguishes people from who are solving problems or innovating versus those who are not is that they have a mental model. They're exercising their brain all the time. When they see a problem, they don't shy away from it. A problem is always an opportunity. And having these brain exercises, when you see something, if a hexagon pops up around that problem or around that idea for you, and you just traverse through that very quickly, will allow you to solve these problems. And most of the new ideas that you come up with this hexagon will not make sense. They will not be worth pursuing. But the fact that you have this instant reaction to anything you see is very, very critical.
Hi.
Sorry.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. It's, I think, over there.
My question is regarding the eye netra. Yeah, actually, in India, the newborn kids have a lot of eye problems regarding retina. And also, examining the retina is a very much tougher process, and it requires painful for parents and also for kids. Taking a 60 days old kid to the hospital and for checking the retina is really difficult.
So your question is, can you also look at the retina?
Yes.
Very much. So, I like giving my project names Sanskrit names like Netra. The next one is called Mitra, which of course, means friend. And Mitra actually stands for MIT Retinal Assessment. And just last week, actually, we heard, so we have a new project to look at the back of the eye using an attachment to a smartphone again. We look at the hemodynamics, look at the blood flow of the eye. And we just heard last week that we are finalists in the X Prize Health Challenge. So it's very exciting. So go to imitra.com to look at that.
Okay, do you have any idea to take this into the rural areas in Tamil Nadu or in India?
So that's why we have this innovation platform. We are working with Alvi Prasad Eye Institute in Hyderabad. And we have about 20 projects going on right now that are in collaboration with MIT from my group and people who had come through my classes to take about 20 ideas and convert them into various diagnostic devices.
Great. One last question, please, right here.
I have a mic.
Or here. Yeah, go ahead.
But it doesn't seem to function. Okay. So MIT Media Lab has an India initiative that's been going on. And I assume it's over the last 2 years that you seem to have done a lot of runs across many metropolitan cities and the smaller run cities as well. There have been a lot of ideas that have emerged, not just inside the IITs that you guys have run, but also with some other lesser known organizations. What happens to those ideas? You've tried to spearhead them, they've worked to some extent, the honeymoon effect lasts for some time. Yeah. Where does that go forward from there?
This is such an important question. In any venture, there are about 5 stages, right? There's identification, prototyping, development, scaling, and so on. And I think our role has been primarily towards the identification, prototyping, just problem identification, prototyping. You're absolutely right. We need a way to move forward. So the Immersion program for us is one of the ways to do that. And the innovation centers that we have already in Hyderabad, and another big one that's coming up in Mumbai, and the one we're setting up in Nashik are the interesting ones. And I have discussions with some of you here, and the response has been fantastic. So we would like to actually create a holding organization, which is somewhat neutral, that can actually do this kind of tasks. And I think angels or VCs are doing great work, but they mostly get to do thumbs up or thumbs down of what's coming at them. And we are working with angels and VCs to see how can we take that one step beyond that, because I think for a lot of the societal problems, which could be billion-dollar opportunities, often the innovator is not the same as entrepreneur. If you're doing e-commerce or payment or something like that, the innovator entrepreneur is the same person. But in many of these cases we're talking about, the innovator may not be the entrepreneur. And many of the innovators may not want to be in that startup at all. So how do we solve that problem? And how do we nurture this innovation so that some other entrepreneur can take it forward and doing this baton passing? So would love to hear your thoughts. The response has been fantastic. And if you go to mitindia.info, you'll see some of the things we are doing.
Thank you, Ramesh.
Thank you.